All right, and we're live. Welcome to episode 70 of the Chirpin Yotes podcast. Look at us, 2 weeks in a row, coming back at you. We have a lot of things to talk about, all topics here to be talked about. I don't know, I blew that one, guys. Sorry about that long day at work, but I got the boys. I got Grandy. I got Matt. Boys, how are we doing?
Just
Matt,
another day, man. Just another day. Not enjoying the Coyotes game right now. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, this Coyotes game got rough in a hurry. But yeah, just doing good. Excited to talk some hockey with you boys. Let's go.
Yeah, lots to talk about. A lot of crazy bombshells all over. I know we woke up to a bit of a surprise this morning. Let me get that slide going for us. I guess, I mean, did these make you? Let me scroll to the top. So these are the renders on the screen here. I'm about to show. So this is obviously the inside bowl right here, which I think it looks pretty cool. I like the what do you call that thing? That jumbotron and all that. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty full to me. Looks a lot more than 5,000 people. Here's a external one. I think it's this. And this will make sense earlier. It's like a bit of a canopy kind of thing. Some digital screen. I'm guessing from the looks of it. I'm really not too sure. Here's it. I guess with a concert. I'll imagine it's Metallica or something. This is the outside view. So this part, I'm assuming, is going to be this right here. And then so I'm thinking so. Yeah, I like that. It says Arizona Coyotes facing the 101. That's pretty cool. I like that a lot. And here's the kind of overall general. I believe you're supposed to be, what do you say, like hotels, apartments, shopping centers, things like that. I think a movie theater. So I'm sure Harkins or somebody will be there. But the best part, and my favorite part is it says Phoenix right here. So I'm guessing maybe they're planning on bringing back the Phoenix Coyotes as God intended, but we'll have to wait and see for that. I think it's a placeholder too, but I can dream.
That's more just the city. There's the whole reason for the name change was to be more inclusive to the state. I can't imagine they go back to Phoenix, especially considering the land is technically right there on the southern end of Scottsdale. I can't imagine the name change actually being going back to Phoenix.
A man can dream. I'm guessing this is the practice arena. I'm assuming.
Yep, that would be my guess.
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me.
And then where the logo is will actually be their home where they play.
And I like it. I mean, I definitely think it's a pretty good render, but I'm understanding that it just leaked out. It wasn't supposed to.
I don't know.
I think it was. I think it was on purpose. Personally, I know I call me a tinfoil hat guy, but I think it was on purpose. But
I feel like everything they've done has been an intentional leak. Nothing about when you're this big as a group and you're not getting any talk from Morello or anybody else, I think anything that's done is done intentionally. Anything that's accidental, I feel like the team would come out and say, "Hey, we didn't mean to." It's just kind of like, "Oh, it's out there," and then it's not, and they don't say why. To me, that's intentional.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it was to drum up support.
Yeah, but they did treat when the white Kachinas leaked early. They did treat it the same exact way, despite that being a very obvious, "Oops, we accidentally leaked this early" thing. It could be purposeful. I don't really think that matters though in the long run if it's purposeful or not. It is what it is. We are going to see these one way or another within the next week. Man, yes, these renderings look awesome. I'm just really sick of looking at renderings.
I think we have more renderings than we do playoff wins. I'm pretty sure. Like from '96 to now, I'm pretty sure we've seen more renderings of arenas than we have seen playoff wins at this point. I mean, I've seen renderings all over the place. I'm sick of them too. I mean, yeah, it looks cool. I mean, like you're saying, Granny, looks cool. But I want to see shovels in the ground. I mean, we haven't even bought the land yet. We haven't even bid on the land yet. So I don't know what the point of leaking it now was. I guess to drum up the Coyotes pack on Twitter, I guess. I don't know. But
so we talked about this last show that the winning bid doesn't necessarily reflect the most amount of money. It has to do with having a plan in place, what the land's going to be used for, those sort of things. And I would imagine that stuff all comes out and becomes public knowledge when bids are placed. So it doesn't surprise me that we're seeing these leaked renderings now, just because it's all going to become public information at the time of the auction. So I think this is kind of to just, okay, we're maybe 2 months out from an auction, um, or 2.5, well, 10 weeks roughly, from potentially seeing the auction take place. And I think this is kind of like, hey, I know things haven't been great on the ice lately. There's been a lot of silence, a lot of, if this doesn't work, relocation talks, that sort of stuff. I think this was kind of like, hey, we're going to leak this to kind of try and, I guess, turn um, turn the image that is out there right now for the Coyotes, because it's not great. It isn't.
No.
Some of the things that even that have come out from the league about what happens if this doesn't happen, and they're not as firm on they're staying in Arizona no matter what. They've basically said like, hey, we need a plan, or and granted, we'll get a team back through expansion even if it doesn't work. But you want this to work. You don't want to see this team go. You don't want to be the new Jets.
Yeah, the new. And actually, is this? Am I crazy, or is that a Stanley Cup playoffs icon right there?
It might be.
It looks like it to me. I don't know if I can. I can't zoom in on this one, but it looks like it to me.
Just real quick,
Hmm.
it's kind of funny listening to us talk about, hey, does this look like this? Ooh, this looks really cool, as we're talking on an audio medium.
Oh, this will have a video format.
Yeah.
This goes on YouTube.
Available on YouTube.
Yeah, this will be on the Inside the Rink and our own YouTubes.
So anybody listening on Spotify or
we should describe it. Yeah, good point, Grandy. Yeah, I guess in a way, yeah.
Or whatever your preferred listening application is, if you decide to check out our pod on YouTube, all of this that we're talking about, all these pictures are going to be available, as well as some slides that we've got set up for later in the show, talking about the rebuild and the state of a couple of players on the team.
And
I guess
don't worry, guys. You won't see my ugly mug because my internet is too slow to actually render cameras still. So I really hope this construction gets done soon, where I get faster internet.
he's the best part of the podcast. His face, I promise you, fans, when you get to see his face, it'll be the best part of the podcast. So your patience is worth it.
No, we'll be kicked off of YouTube the second that happens.
I get a ban right away. Hey, what?
Don't sell yourself short, Grandy. Somebody's going to shut this off thinking they're watching The Bachelor.
Exactly. That's what I was saying. Exactly. You're exactly right. ABC's gonna call us right away. For those listening to the audio version, good point, Grandy. I didn't think about that. The renders. I mean, you can see Craig Morgan's Twitter tweet out the pictures and some other ones around there. I know Cameron Cox from 12 News did as well. But essentially, I mean, yeah, it's a rink, obviously, but there's like a little canopy thing that kind of like, it looks like, I'm assuming it's indoors or cooled off. It's somehow, but it has a
it kind
between the shops.
Kind of reminds me of the old strip in Vegas. Like, think about walking down the old strip and you look up and it's all enclosed, but it's not enclosed by a physical roof. You're walking under a canopy and they light the canopy up at night and that sort of thing. That's almost what that reminds me of.
Yeah, that's a good way to. Yeah.
Are you really surprised that a guy that owns the Sahara in Vegas, would do something like that?
I will say I got very big Vegas vibes off of.
Yeah, it does. This. I was just at T-Mobile Arena a weekend ago. It does look very Vegas. Yeah, it does. Mm-hmm. I definitely see the influence, but I mean, T-Mobile Arena is great. If you guys haven't been there, it's a great arena. So I don't blame them at all. Take it. And the outside, I like most is kind of just how it just seems to fit right there in that corner. What a good spot for it, just based on the little render. But let's do the bid. Let's get that process started. I'm tired of talking about arena rumors. Let's talk about shovels and construction equipment.
I'm still saying though, boys, when game one happens in the new arena, we're definitely going to have a trip where it's live.
Oh, definitely.
All of us in person.
Definitely. And our new episode of The Bachelor. Grandy will be on The Bachelor about 3 months after that. So get your roses ready.
Yeah, almost a year ago to the date, I feel like we were talking about the Tempe project, and
Yeah.
about, reminding everybody to go vote, and about how close we were to finally having something secure. And here we are a year later, same conversation. I guess I shouldn't be surprised. If you're a Coyotes fan for 25 years, it's not new territory.
Mm-mm.
It's really
No.
not, and that's kind of where I'm at with these renderings. It's the same song and dance. Each rendering looks better and more awesome than the last. But to me, until this auction goes through, that's all it is. It's a rendering. Let's get this in action. Let's get this in motion. Let's win this auction. Let's keep the Coyotes in Arizona where they belong. None of us want to have. Yes, we're going to get an expansion team if it happens, but none of us want to have put the.
You don't want to go down that road. You don't want to be
No.
that guy that followed a team for 25 years to lose it and then end up with a new one.
Not
It's
just
just not-
25.
Because I don't even think I would be
years.
a fan, too.
25. It's 25 years of pain and misery with very few high points, and the team is right on the cusp of turning the shoulder when we'd lose it, because they're still going to be here next year. That much was talked about by Bill Daly and Gary Bettman.
Yeah, that was
They
confirmed.
will
Yeah.
still be here next year. It'll be the year after, if it happens that it happens. We will be right on the cusp of something great, and this will get yanked away from us. That just
The most Coyotes hockey way to do it, though. I mean,
So I am curious what you guys think would happen. Let's say this doesn't go through and relocation becomes a very real possibility. And then 6 months later, Alex Morello is able to secure a plot of land after plans have been made for relocation. And, he can start putting shovels in the ground. Do you guys think they would still proceed with relocation, or do you think they yank relocation from whoever wins that bid?
I could see relocation still being an option and telling Morello, you'll get the expansion team type thing.
Yeah, but would they at that point tell Morello he's got to spend, $750 million on an expansion team? Because at that point, if they relocate, Morello's either got to agree that he's going with the team, or the Board of Governors would have to force a sale at that point.
Which draws out the
Morello has
process,
bought
too.
the land, which, they then break ground on, and Morello is saying, wait a minute, I bought land, I broke ground. I'm going to have an arena. You guys are trying to force a sale. I might get $400 million for this team, and then you want me to spend $750 million on expansion. So, there's a lot more that's got to get looked at there. If this doesn't go through, is that the end of Morello looking for a plot?
I think this is his last chance. If I had to just guess, it's his last chance. I think this is it. I think the Board of Governors is fed up. I think Bettman's on his last little, using every squeeze of goodwill he has with the board. This is his last shot. I truly believe that. I hate to say it. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to say, oh yeah, screw him. But I mean, I think this is the last shot. I think, and I feel, very strongly it's the last shot for him. Again, I don't know, maybe I'm a jerk for this, but I don't think we get a team right away with expansion. I really don't feel like we do. I truly just don't feel that way. I don't think we do. I really don't.
If you kind of look at it the way the NHL has handled expansion in the past, like Seattle completely renovated their arena before they were actually granted a team for expansion. Seattle actually had to go out and prove, like, hey, if we're going to expand, or the NHL basically said, show us that you have a place to play if we're going to grant you expansion. And Vegas already had plans in place, and they had the financial backing and the land already secured to build T-Mobile before they were granted an expansion team. So for Arizona to get one, they're still sitting in the same place where they've got to have land, they have to have a developer, and they have to have an owner in place. So even if Arizona, I agree with Tyler, if Arizona lost this team right now, I think Salt Lake City is probably ahead of them. Houston's potentially ahead of them. Calgary.
Well,
Atlanta would be ahead of them as well.
I don't know if Houston would be ahead of them. I think Salt Lake City gets the Coyotes. If in this hypothetical, Salt Lake City gets the Coyotes, Atlanta's ahead of us, and then I think we'd slot in there if we have the owners come forward that want a team here.
And then there's always the potential of Hartford too, because the governor of Connecticut has reached out to the league as well on multiple occasions and has talked about how they potentially have or could have an NHL ready arena within a year if they were granted the option to get another team.
And I have this to say too.
The difference between Hartford and Atlanta, Houston is Hartford is a shared already has a team in that TV market. And
right.
That's what I think the league is looking at right now is capturing these TV markets.
Exactly. That's that whole tri-state area where, you know, you're maybe not going to acquire new fans, and it might be a similar issue to what, you know, Quebec is, because you're not going to gain new fans putting another team in Quebec City. But what it would do for conference alignment, balancing the East-West dynamic, having a team out there, there's reason to believe at some point, you know, Hartford could be that fourth team, you know, if the NHL really does want to expand to 36. I would imagine
that's too many.
Probably on
that's
that.
too many teams.
I don't have.
I think 32 is the magic number. Really?
And that's where we're at. We're at 32, and it's a good number. But I think what a lot of people ignore when talking about expansion, because the biggest argument against it is it waters down the product. But, you know, it also develops new players. It brings people to the game that never would have played it otherwise. I mean, Austin Matthews is the perfect example that gets used all the time. He said multiple times he'd be playing baseball if it weren't for the Coyotes. So, yeah, I do think it is a big deal if you're going to expand to markets that potentially bring in new players.
I think one thing
Salt Lake City, Atlanta, Houston, and Arizona. To me, that's the four markets. Those three markets that don't have teams right now are going to be the first three that get expanded into.
But I don't think the thing I see as an issue too is the last two expansion teams were on the West Coast, right? Vegas and Seattle. So you're going to add. So then you move.
The next one is Atlanta.
No, I know, but if you move, so say we just worst case scenario, nuclear option, Coyotes move to Salt Lake City. That means you have Salt Lake City, Vegas, Seattle, Anaheim, LA, Vancouver, all the west side. Why would you add another team there? You have your desert team in Vegas. You have Salt Lake City for the between. You have Seattle, and you have the California coast and Vancouver.
I don't necessarily like that argument if you consider the fact that you've got two teams in New York, one in New Jersey, all playing within 40 miles of each other.
Yeah, but the population's a lot bigger, though. It's a lot more population-wise out there. That's my only argument. Again, I wanted to say.
Tyler, Arizona doesn't give a crap about California teams.
Oh, I know that. And I'm not saying that I know we don't, but I'm saying the league, from a league standpoint, not
TV markets. Yeah. TV markets. It's why the NBA makes money. It's why the NFL makes money, is they capture the biggest TV markets in America. And right now, the NHL has done a poor job of that.
I wonder if Salt Lake City would bend liquor laws.
Oh, that's a good point too.
On Sundays, because I remember right, and I could be totally wrong about this, but isn't the sale of alcohol illegal on Sundays in Salt Lake City?
Let's look it up. Let's see. Salt Lake City. Liquor on Sundays. Let's see what the old Google says.
But while Tyler's looking that up, again, it's just that's the biggest thing you have to remember with any expansion.
It's always about TV markets. It's not gate. It's no longer a gate-driven league, especially with all the streaming platforms that are out there to watch games on.
Why the NHL took so long to come back from COVID versus the NBA and the NFL, who both boomed out of it, was
especially NFL. Holy crap!
The NBA and NFL has done a far, far, far superior job capturing those markets.
Yeah, a big issue though is that neither of those leagues play in Canada, and you had far greater restrictions with Canadian teams and what you were able to do league wide in that scenario, as far as putting out a good product. Because we had an entire playoff that all the Canadian teams played against each other. We were guaranteed one was going to go to a conference final because we couldn't keep divisions the way they were. So I think it was a little more difficult for the NHL, especially in terms of navigating their way back to play, because they're operating across two countries. They're across an international border there.
But the NBA does too.
I got my answer, by the way. We have our answer for the.
Real quick, didn't the Raptors and the Blue Jays both play in Buffalo when NBA and NBA and MLB returned to play?
I know the MLB did. I know the MLB for sure did.
I don't think the NBA did.
Yeah,
So
I know for a fact.
The NBA also played in one bubble down in Miami.
Well, that's true as well.
The bubble
but
sun.
I do feel like when they went back to standard play, that the Raptors may have played a fair amount of their games in the United States. They didn't play in Toronto very often at all. So for what it's worth, I do think we're still talking about one team. You can get the Blue Jays to play in Buffalo, which they did, and you have no problem there. But getting 7 NHL teams to play in the United States, that would have been a little more difficult.
I have that answer as well. By the way, the Raptors played the rest of their home games due to COVID-19 at the Amalie Arena in Tampa Bay. Excuse me.
Yep. Yeah, I was pretty. I didn't know where it was, but I was pretty sure they did play out of the United States because of that. Players could come into the United States without any issue, but there was a 2-week quarantine to go back into Canada at that point. So there was no way to play home games.
Yep. And then for your liquor, it is pretty much just about anywhere. It says retail products such as beers and seltzers up to 5% ABV. You can buy them at grocery stores, convenience stores, both on Sundays and holidays. And you can go get a drink as well on these days, according to gastronomicslc.com. So there you go. There it is.
Yep. Was just guessing on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded right. I believed you. I mean, it sounded like something Salt Lake City would have. So
for a while, there were some relatively extreme laws that were religious based. Obviously,
Texas has them too. You can't buy beer until noon on Sundays. You can't buy liquor on Sundays. You can only buy beer, and it's after noon in Texas.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yep. Mm-hmm. A lot of people. I live in a military town, so people came from all over. Went to go buy their beer before 12, and these things are blaring off like a whole robot voice. You cannot buy this product or whatever. It's a whole thing. I was confused. There's also no liquor at the HEBs or grocery stores. No, like here you can go get Maker's Mark at a Fry's.
Interestingly enough, Colorado. I had a friend who lived there for quite a while, and without going to a liquor store, you can't buy beer higher than 3%. And certain beer manufacturers or brewers, I guess, they would actually brew 3% versions of their beer that could be sold in certain states like that. But if you went to a liquor store, you could buy the real thing.
That's insane.
It's weird. It's the same way. It's the same way in Minnesota. You have to buy all your alcohol through a liquor store. It's so funny because we'll have gas stations that are literally split in half, where you have one counter servicing a liquor store on one side and a gas station on the other, because that's the only way to buy it at a gas station.
All right. Well, now that we're 24 minutes into
right. That was interesting. That was a great conversation. I learned a lot today.
Let's try and get back to hockey.
Well, speaking of, hockey culture, I guess there's some. I missed this. So, Grandy, I'm going to take the reels on this one because I missed this on Twitter. Don't know, but just take it away, Grandy.
So, veteran tough guy Chris Simon, and I apologize because I am blanking on his name, but an ex-member of the Pittsburgh Penguins, both took their own lives this week, tragically. And though, yes, there is likely CTE involved, I do just want to say this as a reminder that if anyone at home is feeling these thoughts, feeling these urges, please either reach out to someone that loves you, reach out to someone that cares for you, or call or text 988, the suicide prevention hotline. You don't have to do this alone. Um, but for our talk on hockey culture, I think we're doing a little bit more broader on this, but let's start on that subject of CTE. Um, Matt, actually, I would love to hear your thoughts on that first.
So I think primarily what needs to change is the staged fighting in hockey. I don't mind the scrums. I don't mind guys protecting teammates, that sort of thing. Um, but we saw the Nicholas Derde, um, or Delorier, sorry, Nick Delorier and Ryan Reeves fight yesterday. Um, right off the face off, it's center ice, staged fight. They agree to it before the drop. It's still a 0-0 game. There's no big hit. There's no retaliation. There's no protecting anybody. It's a simple we're trying to fire the bench up fight. And I think that's something that's got to leave the game because I think that takes out probably 30% of the fights. And if you can eliminate an aspect that maybe doesn't play as big of a role in the game, um, you're not necessarily taking protecting your teammates. You're not taking away fighting from the game. But if you make that a 20-minute misconduct automatically, um, I think that might go a long way in preventing CTE. We know it's repeated hits to the head. It's not, you're more likely to deal with it from, being punched than you are from taking a cross check, taking, a big hit into the boards. And we do know that those things cause concussions, but it's the repeated blows that cause the long-term issues.
And
It's why
it's
offensive linemen are more likely to have CTE in the NFL than a wide receiver.
and
And
I
a
think
wide
there has to be
receiver
some.
will always take a bigger hit than an
Mhm.
Yep.
offensive lineman. I mean, you see those guys get popped and they're out, they stay down, they end up with a concussion, but it's still offensive linemen who on every single play they're going head to head, and it's those repeated blows.
And
Yep.
it's when you're, so I was a college lacrosse player. I got a major concussion my first year, big time. Like doctor was like, hey, you might want to really reconsider playing a different sport because that was a big hit. I mean, you're lucky you didn't forget more than you did. Played another year, of course. You're 18, 19. My parents were old school parents, like, you'll be fine, go play. Got another one, a small one, thankfully, thank God. But I wish there needs to be more protections too. And I guess it goes into your conversation about hockey culture, Grandy. Is we should make it okay to say, hey man, it's okay to take a scratch if you need to, because those PDE, it's not worth it. CTE sounds
Yeah.
scary. It sounds absolutely horrifying. I mean, I feel terrible for Chandler Jones. I mean, Cardinals player. I mean, it looks AB. I mean, how many players can you name, right? It sounds terrible. It sounds scary, especially when I've had a couple knocks to the head
I
that are
mean,
pretty
it's
good.
it's
It's
basically early onset dementia.
Mhm.
That's basically what you're doing to yourself. And anybody that's had, a grandparent, a parent, a loved one that has gone through dementia, they call it the long goodbye because you're not the same person going through it, and that's what CTE does to you. It's not just some memory loss or headaches or whatever. It's basic deterioration of the brain.
and you need that. I mean, you need
It
that, and it's like people say, oh well, they get paid. Yeah, they got paid to do it, but honestly, if you could ask Chandler Jones, would he say it's worth it? I mean, or just not, I don't pick on him specifically, but I mean, a person with CTE, would they say it's worth it? I mean, just because it's
I mean,
money doesn't mean it's always worth it.
Look at Daniel Carcillo. I mean,
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
he's out there massively advocating
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
and he's talked nothing more about, man, I would have never played,
Hmm.
if it meant all of this went away, the mood swings, the forgetfulness, the depression, everything that comes with it. He's gone out on a limb and said, I would have never played the game. There's plenty of NFL players who, are on record saying, "I won't put my kid in Pop Warner." They're not going to grow up playing football. I'm still playing it, but I wouldn't put my kid through that. You know, it's just not
and,
a safe thing.
and that's just it's a sad reality of the sport right now, of both sports, and they have to find ways to deal with this because you can't keep watching your players go through this.
No.
But back to what the NHL can do, I think, Matt, you're absolutely right. Staged fighting needs to go. It just needs to go. It doesn't serve a purpose. You can say, "Oh, well, it can
No,
spark the bench." Whose bench?
but you know what? It doesn't even matter if you could spark the bench. You're talking about a regular season game that might not have any playoff implications. Like who in October that is fighting on a team who's down 5-1, who's going out there trying to fire his bench up in the second period. What does that game mean in the grand scheme of things
Well,
versus that guy's mental health later in life?
No.
look
You're
at
right.
look at Matt Rempe, and I'm sure
gonna
he's
bring him
loving
up,
it.
yeah.
I'm sure he's
Mhm.
loving all of what he's going through. He's having the time of his life. But look at his face, and it is
Mhm.
just a mangled mesh every day because that is literally all he does is he goes out there and fights these staged fights. And it's like, man, have more of a career. You're averaging more penalty minutes a game than you are ice time a game.
I was gonna say, yeah. You think I was about to bring that stat up? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he is too. Yeah, I was gonna say.
So just think
Yeah,
of the
I think
long-term
that's
repercussions. And this is a young kid. His brain is still in development at his age, and he's doing this to this.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. You got to take that out. Additionally, I know maybe this leap is a little bit extreme, but with the NHL going to neck guards, if you can add a little bit of almost like a knee brace type deal, if you can find a way to brace the neck just slightly without limiting mobility, for guys taking big hits, and you can somewhat eliminate the whiplash that comes with it, that would go a long way as well. I
Yeah.
wouldn't push something like that if it affected a player's ability to, keep their head on a swivel, because being able to protect yourself is the number one way to avoid injury. So I wouldn't want to take any kind of mobility out by, making players wear neck pads or something like that. But, if they're going to go to a mandatory skate guard, could you find a way to incorporate some kind of technology to help minimize whiplash in that as well? um, to add some protection to the brain. I mean, that whiplash leads to concussions, and concussions lead to
That's
CTE, not to the extent of getting repetitively blown in the face, but to an extent, yeah, it would go a long way as well.
Yeah, at the
well,
end of the day, there's a reason we're seeing most hockey players that are dealing with CTE being the old enforcers, being Derek Bugard, being all these enforcers who have tragically taken their own lives in one way, shape, or form. It's just, it's sad. And I'm not a huge fan of hockey fighting. If I want to watch a fight, I'll go watch MMA. But I understand the need for fighting to protect your teammates. But this is just, yeah, let's just get rid of the stage fighting. Make it a game suspension even if you have a staged fight.
it's the thing to
Just
add too is
something.
I want to bring up Daniel Garcia again. It's like that man got to play in the NHL, which is, I mean, how many people dream of that? How many? I mean, all of us would take the NHL job right today. Today, if we could get signed, we do it, right? This man took so much damage to his brain that he regrets playing professional hockey. That's the level of things we're dealing with here. You know what I mean? Just to piggyback on that point earlier, and also to bring up, hate to bring up the Cowboys, but there's a player on there who just retired. He just was drafted like 2019, 2018. Leighton
Leighton
Vander Esch.
Vander Esch.
Yeah, he used to wear a thing on his neck. I mean, on his back to kind of brace his neck. He retired already, And this is the level that we're at, folks. I mean, it's like, again, I love the big, exciting. Everyone loves those big, crazy Cronwall hits back in the day. I mean, those things were awesome, right? But it's, yeah, I think it is time to make some kind of change, some kind of whiplash device, or some kind of, I don't know, travel
And
pillow, something here. I mean,
it's not even necessarily the
excuse me.
Cronwall hits that need to go. I think if the staged fighting goes, that's a big part of it, and it really is the guys like Liam O'Brien. I feel like that guy's going to deal with some of that stuff in the future, and it might not be extreme, but it's always a risk, and it's something you want to see minimized if you can without taking away from the game.
Yeah, I'm sure they can figure it out. I'm sure our helmets are a lot better than they used to be. So hopefully we do start to see some changes. I'm sure. But yeah, I hope people like Daniel Carcillo keep speaking out. I hope they keep the pressure on the NHL and get these changes in, because it's a shame. I mean, these guys took their lives. Again, maybe not all CTE, but still the fact that it was even a part of it is the problem. So hopefully we do get that addressed. But
Yep. Well, sticking with hockey culture, recently we had the Flames relinquish rights to, I believe it was a 2021 draft pick, Topo Niemi, second
Okay.
round pick, who was sentenced to a year in prison for a rape that occurred while he was a minor.
Oof.
Um, I don't know what the time served aspect of it was, or how much time he's actually going to spend in prison. It occurred overseas. Again, it occurred while he was a minor. Um, but we recently just saw, 5 indicted as part of Hockey Canada. Um, Hockey Canada has been the center of accusations going back to the early 2000s as far as sexual assault. We recently had all the controversy about how the NHL handled the Chicago situation. Um, this doesn't even begin, or this, we're not even including the racism issues that are prevalent in hockey. Just from a sexual assault standpoint, what is going on with hockey, and why is it such an issue amongst um, hockey culture? What is it about hockey culture that influences it, and what has to be done to change it?
And
So
that's hard. There's a lot. I mean, like you said, you look at Letterkenny, right? The hockey players in Letterkenny. I mean, they're a certain way, but you see a lot of hockey players in a way. Obviously it's a stereotype, but I don't know. I think it's so deep. I wish I knew. I mean, it is shocking, though. You're right, Granny. Sorry, I cut you off there.
well, the answer of why is obviously a very complicated one, but I think a lot of it does go back to the. And this isn't just a hockey issue. This is young men growing up issue, where if you're treated like you're special because of your talent, and you don't have the right upbringing behind you, which a lot of these kids don't, especially hockey, because you're not living with your family for 75% of your year. You're living with a billet family. And yeah, it's just, you get this idea that, oh, this belongs to me. And I mean, again, this could just be speculation. It's 100% speculation, because I'm not part of these locker rooms. But how we can fix it, it's going to be a process, but it all starts with us. It all starts with us introducing more morals in our own dressing rooms, us being supportive of each other, us just being the bare minimum, a decent human being. Just set the example for others. That is the only way we're ever going to change this. And obviously, we're not going to touch these locker rooms in Canada, but we just got to hope that there's other people out there like us that want to set that example there too.
And I would like, real quick, sorry, Topi Roni is the draft pick. I'm sorry, I got the name wrong there, or the prospect wrong. Still 2021 second round draft pick, I believe, defenseman. Continue, Grandy. I did want to clear that up.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's just at the end of the day, change really does start with each of us and how we approach it and how we raise it. I have a daughter and I fully want to raise her around hockey. And in order to do that, I want to be the example that she sets around that hockey culture.
So, can I ask? Does this feel like there needs to be a shift in the basically the boys club that has run hockey for 40 years? Is there too much of this boys will be boys mentality because it's what they grew up in? Do we need to see that type of change where we see a lot of maybe not forced selling of CHL teams, but basically just fresh starts all
So
around?
so just this has always bugged me ever since I was an older teen. But the line "boys will be boys" has always irked me because to me that says, well, we're setting a lower standard for boys because reasons. But yeah, absolutely. I think that there needs to be a major change in the old boys club. I think there needs to be I don't know if fresh blood is necessarily what I'm going towards there, but I think looking no further than Mike Babcock in after causing issues in Toronto goes into Columbus and before before the season even starts causes massive issues.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
for
crazy.
those who don't
That
remember
was
that
crazy.
situation, he was asking players to go through the pictures on their phones because
Yes.
and the claim was that it helped build camaraderie. But he was calling young players into his office and saying, "Hey, let me see your phone. I want to go through your pictures."
That is a breach of privacy. Whether that even as athletes, they're still human beings. Even as if though they're paid millions of dollars to play a sport that they love and we love, they're still human beings. They still have a right to privacy. That is something very important. And just the feeling that, oh, I can take this away because they work for me is that's wrong to me. That just strikes me as wrong. As a basic um I I have my boss go through pictures I take at work pretty consistently, and I have my own folder set up to show her when it's that time. It happens, but that's something I do willingly. It's not something I do because I'm asked to. I don't know.
It's hard because it's something that is so ingrained. I don't want to sound like I'm making an excuse for anything like that because obviously I'm not. But I don't know to say it. How do you fix it? It's like, well, I mean,
So when
I
you
don't want
guys see
to.
things like, oh, we hired this person to be in charge of sensitivity training, and we brought in this person for they're going to sit on the board and weigh in on how to change this, change that. Do you guys actually read that and go, oh, good for them, they're doing it right, or do you look at that and go, that's a PR move?
I think it's a mix of both.
I
Honestly,
think
there's
it's
times where I can tell it's like they are genuinely trying to make it better, and some it's just like they got my company I work for, not the best of histories, but one of those things. It's just sometimes it is, sometimes I think
Generally,
it
those
just depends.
hirings feel like they come right after something became public.
Exactly what I was trying to
Because
say. Yeah, exactly what I was trying to say.
that's what
Yeah.
I was going to say. Exactly, that's what I was going to bring up there. If the hiring comes like the Blackhawks when they did it right after the Kyle Beach thing, well, come on, you're just putting makeup on a pig at that point.
I love that
Like we
expression.
know what you're
So
trying
funny.
to do there. But if a
Yeah.
team does it and if a team does it when there's no negative press around them, Yeah, I would applaud them for doing that. Because again, every little bit of change helps to get hockey culture to the place where it should be.
Do you think that the first real change or real shift in culture happens when a player or a group of players realize that their NHL career is over, regardless of how good they are because of it? And I'm not talking about the five that just got indicted. There's the Jake Virtanen thing that happened in Vancouver, and he ended up in the KHL. But none of these guys were major stars for their team. You look at Montreal and Logan Malou. Um, they drafted a kid who said, "I hope nobody drafts me this year because I'd like to take a year to reflect and become a better person." Because and his thing was he sent a photo to the rest of his team of a consensual act. He didn't do anything inappropriately to someone. It was sending a photo after the fact without consent, which is wrong in its own right. I don't let this come off as sounding like I'm defending him because I'm not. Um, but this kid said, "Hey, I don't want anybody to draft me," and he was rewarded by being selected in the first round by the Montreal Canadiens, and the Canadiens saying, "Yeah, we don't care. We're gonna fix this." Do you
I
think
think that
that
would go to the
that
boys' club, I guess.
Correct me
reinforces?
if I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
that
Correct me if I'm wrong.
reinforces.
Wasn't that the pick too, where they had all the women in the organization go forward to make it?
I think so.
Holy
I
shit!
think
Yeah, I
so.
think it
Yeah, like
was.
it came
Yeah,
off.
actually, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, if you're a player growing up and let's say you're 15 or 16 years old and you're watching that on TV, I mean, it doesn't basically say to you, "Hey, it's okay to go out and do this," but it does say, I'm not going to lose my chance to make something of myself if I screw up. And I think I don't want to say the fear of getting caught has to be there, because the reality is a good person doesn't have that fear. A good person, a moral person, understands that you just don't do that.
Hmm.
Um, but I do think that the message that sends is, as long as you don't screw up too bad,
Hmm.
it'll be fine.
There's a certain limit. As long as you're underneath this line, you're good.
and
Yeah, and
this is
I think that line's set way too high.
yeah,
Yeah, there's some times where I'm like, damn,
and
damn.
this is nothing against Logan Mayu, because I do feel like, based on what I've heard him say and what I've seen and what I've heard that he's done, I feel like he is trying to take steps, and he is genuinely sorry for what he did. Again, I don't know him. I can't comment further than that. It's just what I've read and what I've heard that he's done. Because, yeah, if you, should this, that's where,
I think the
and that's where
bigger
the tricky
issue
part
is
comes in.
this never should have happened. It shouldn't be, does a player feel sorry? Do they deserve to be drafted? I think if you're trying to change the culture, you're trying to get these things out of
Out of
youth
the game
hockey
entirely.
entirely. Exactly. So whether or not a player feels sorry or is remorseful of what they did, and should they be drafted or shouldn't they? That's I guess a different question entirely than how do you get it out of the game. And I think I was referencing more, does it take a team or the league basically saying, I mean, if this was Connor Bedard who, basically did what we're talking about with Topi Roni, if that was Connor Bedard and, somebody drafted him and said, we'll wait the year for him to get out of prison, and the league says, well, he'd be good for the league because he's a franchise generational talent. You know that I think that's where I'm wondering, at what point does it not matter how good a player is to say no? You you committed a sexual assault, you're not going to play in this league.
I think that's where it starts. I think if some team were to say take a level of a player of that caliber, and say, I don't care, we're not drafting you for that reason, and say it for that reason, I think that will begin the domino. But I mean, look at the NFL too. I mean, they're definitely not full of,
But
I mean,
my
a lot of them still
mind,
play too. So it's hard. I mean,
talking about this, my mind immediately goes to Patty Kane. And
Yeah,
if the
and
Blackhawks,
I guess
if the Black,
and now Red Wings.
go
Yeah.
ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
so I guess the difference there though is Kane was accused but acquitted. And I think
Yeah.
there's a public opinion out there, but
Mm.
he
By the
I
laws, he's okay. I mean, from a lawyer
yeah,
perspective,
I
he's
guess
okay.
I guess we also all talk about you know, there's women out there and it's a very, 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 very small number. But there are women out there who have and stories that are out there who have accused men of inappropriate behavior, and it's come out later that it never really happened. And I don't think that's enough to just an accusation is enough that it should put
Yeah.
somebody's career on ice.
Hmm.
I do think Kane not being suspended, still being in Chicago, still being in the league, I'm okay with that. I don't have an issue with that.
He went to court and got acquitted, so or
My
whatever happened. So
Yeah.
my thing with it more though is, should he have been suspended while the investigation was ongoing?
No, because I
I can.
still think it's the same thing. You suspend a player,
Yeah.
they lose their pay. Their reputation is tarnished beyond because now once you've suspended them, you've punished them as a league for something that they haven't been convicted of doing. I do think if there's damning evidence that gets presented to the league, then the league can make their I mean, if somebody's got pictures of something that happened or a video of something that happened and their court trial's not coming up for 6 months or whatever, and the league sees this video and the league says, hey, that looks terrible, I'm all for the league at that point stepping in.
Hmm.
But I
I
don't
agree.
think
Yeah.
just an accusation
Yeah.
gets there.
I don't think it's enough. No.
He's
You can
not.
accuse anybody
He's
for
not
anything,
that
really.
level of star. He's not that level of star, but it's going to be interesting to see how the Carter Hart situation plays out since he was one of
Oh
the
yeah,
top.
that's right. Yeah,
He
he
is the
was.
biggest name on that list,
Hmm.
and I
He
really
should
hope
never play in the
NHL.
NHL again.
Nope, nope,
If
never. I
they're
never
all
want to.
convicted, none of those
Professional
players should be
hockey,
in the NHL.
really. I mean,
So
I don't think
I had
any
him
league.
in. I had him. I play dynasty hockey. I'm in a couple leagues, and I had him in two of my leagues,
That shit's
including
insane,
one
by
of
the
my
way.
big ones. And when it became clear, because you could do the math, and it hadn't been announced yet that he was one of the guys, but you could do the math, and you could see based on the statements that there was 5 guys left who hadn't made a statement. It became pretty clear then at that point who had done it, and right then I cut him. I cut him from my teams because I did not want him on my team. I didn't care. I lost a year
And it
of
kind of
good
should have
play out of it,
been.
but
It kind of should have been a little. I think all 5 teams, um, with the exception of I think Florida owned Heponiemi's rights. Is that right? I think they're the only team that had a player that wasn't in the NHL.
oh no, Ottawa.
Ottawa. Okay. So, with the exception of Ottawa, I do find fault with the fact that Philly, Calgary, these teams didn't. When all of this became abundantly clear it was going to happen, they didn't do anything about it until just before the indictment. And granted, they didn't. I'm not saying that they should have been cut, but as a team, you can suspend these players if you'd like, or you can make a statement as a team that says, for whatever reason you want to say this player won't be with us this season. I think Vancouver did a great job of it with Jake Virtanen. I mean, they basically said, we're going to retain your rights, but you can go play overseas if you want. We'll loan you to whatever team you want to go play for overseas, but you're not going to wear a Canucks uniform while these accusations are out there.
So
And
really quick, going
I
back
would
to the
like to
5.
see. I mean,
No, finish your thought, then I'll get on mine because I have a rant coming. I have
oh yeah,
a
I would
rant
have
coming.
loved to have seen that about Carter Hart. I would have loved to have seen that with somebody like Carter Hart. Where they basically just say, "Hey, you can pick a team overseas that will play you, or you can just sit out, or you can make whatever decision you want, but you're not going to play for us, and you're not going to play for Lee Valley." So that would
So
have been a
Probably the
statement to
fairest
a
thing.
lot of
Yeah.
kids growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
I agree 100%. And yes, the Vancouver Canucks did right with how they handled the Jake Virtanen thing. The thing that did wrong on so many levels is the Calgary Flames with the Dylan Dubé announcement. When Dylan Dubé stepped away from the team, they announced it as he is leaving.
That's
He is
right.
leaving the team for a mental health break. We have fought so hard to get men's mental health treated seriously. We have fought so hard for mental health to be taken seriously in any subject whatsoever. To go out and say that this fucking asshole who raped a fucking girl is taking a break from a team for mental health reasons is so beyond wrong. It is so beyond fucked up. And fuck you, Flames, for doing that. Just it. I am. Yeah. It is something that just still grinds me to no end that they did that. Just
And for
say
what
the
it's
truth.
worth, I'm sure. For what it's worth, I'm sure there's things that teams can't come out and say. They probably
So say
No.
personal
couldn't come out
reasons.
and say, right, exactly, and that's fine. But they probably can't come out and say Dylan Dubé is one of 5 accused of sexual misconduct as part of the Hockey Canada investigation, and he's going to be away from the team. I wouldn't ever expect an NHL team to come out and do that, because at that point it potentially sways innocence or guilt one way or another when you have a massive organization like that
And
speaks on behalf of either a defendant or a victim in that scenario. So I do agree with you 100%. Coming out and saying it was for mental health reasons, I mean, the Flames should lose a draft pick for that. Personally, I think that's an absolutely terrible way to announce somebody's leave of absence.
and I agree with you, especially as despite the seemingly overwhelming evidence that's been lined up against these guys, they haven't been proven guilty yet. We do have to remember that. But so yeah, for that reason, no, they shouldn't have said, "Oh yeah, he is being suspended because he is." No, but just say personal reasons. Just say
Yeah.
personal reasons.
Yeah.
Just
Exactly.
anything but mental health.
Yeah. That was a bad look. Yeah. That was only what, about a month or 2 ago, right? That's right. That was pretty recent. I remember.
That was yep, and that all
That was
stems
pretty.
from, what was it,
Yeah.
the 2018
Yeah,
World
2018
Junior
team.
team?
Yeah. Hmm. That part I remember. But yeah, that's right. Yeah, I do remember them saying that now. Yeah, I remember seeing that. It's a shame because hockey. I mean, I'm a lacrosse player saying this, but hockey is just one of the best things on this entire planet. I mean, it truly is just such a wonderful sport community for the most part. I mean, it's a shame that we have this cloud over
Yeah,
us, especially
some
the
of
last
the
couple of years. I
nicest
mean,
people that you ever meet. Some of the nicest people you ever meet are hockey fans.
yeah. And I will say
They
this
really
too. I
are.
mean,
Like, to Tyler's
to
point,
piggyback on that, the Knights fans that I met when I was seeing the Wings play a couple weeks ago, they're the nicest people I met. I gotta say, the Knights fans on Twitter a little rough, but the fans in person, the nicest people. Oh yeah, the best place over there. That's a good place to get the best pretzels, the best alcohols over here. This show me kind of where things were like. Oh, that Top Rungs, a nightclub. It was just great people. I mean, it's amazing when you're at a game and you see just the families, the kids, all that good stuff, and then you have this cloud just looming right over our heads. I mean, I hope we can fix it. I don't have a solution myself. I hope that we do. I mean,
So we talked about, so just to let you guys in on a little behind the scenes look. Me and Tyler talked about before the podcast. Oh yeah, we don't have a lot of subjects tonight. I think this will be done in about an hour.
Yeah, 59:44 right now. Yep.
And we've only
hmm
talked about two. So I guess
Technically
this would be a
3.
good time. Well, yeah. I mean, two fit one. Yeah, yeah.
Let's
I
see.
agree. So I guess now would be the time to get to the Coyotes portion of this
Yeah,
show. Yeah.
Yep,
I
yep.
think
Pulling
so.
it up. If I can choose the
All
right
right.
window to share, I can pull that up for you, Matt. Let me pull this up. Give me 1 second. Okay. Look at me. Look at us advancing. So I did want to ask you guys, and by me, I mean it was a topic we all chose to talk about. State of the rebuild. I know that we had that last week. We talked. We had a, would you rather be a fan of the beginning part or this whole year, whatever. So how are we doing? I have my two draft experts here with me in the room. So you guys tell me. Matt, we'll start with you since this is your selections
All right.
here.
So
Who do you want to start with?
the reason that I wanted to speak on this topic a little bit was because there after the Coyotes went on the 14 game losing streak, there was a ton of the rebuild is far from over. This team is still horrible. The team is going to have to change. They need more picks. They need to continue to sell, continue to add. So I think that's a little bit misguided. I think the team has begun to turn the corner, or the organization itself, I should say, with some of the draft picks they've made recently. What Tyler's been scrolling across the screen: Logan Cooley, Dylan Gunther, Sean Dursey, Yusuf Alamaki, and JJ Moser. Um, all these guys are they're super young. They're a huge part of this rebuild, and I think all of them do what a lot of teams don't generally get through the draft. Um, they don't, or I'm sorry, they hope they get through the draft. They generally don't get these impact players at such a young age. JJ Moser is in his third year in the NHL, and he was drafted 3 years ago. Um, Logan Cooley a year ago, Dylan Gunther 2 years ago, and these guys are playing impact minutes, and they're not just out there to get experience. They are playing big minutes. They are playing very well as well. Um, the 14 game losing streak soured a lot of people on this season, but I think what gets ignored about how successful this season has been is that goaltending was a huge issue during that losing streak. Connor Ingram fell off in a big way. Karel Vejmelka hasn't played very well this year either. In the losses in that 14 game losing streak, the Coyotes as a team got 868 goaltending as a save percentage. 868. Ottawa is league worse this year at like 889 or something like that on the season. So that tells you how bad goaltending was during that stretch of February. Um, Not to make it sound like Connor Ingram was stealing games, because he was, but Karel Vejmelka was also losing games that we could have won early in the year. Um, Through January 24th, when the losing streak started, the Coyotes got 909 save percentage combined out of both goalies. League average is 904. They weren't far ahead of league average. So where in the past Darcy Kemper, I mean, he was known for stealing games that the Coyotes
All the
had no
time.
business ever being in.
All the time.
Um, Connor Ingram had a few games like that earlier this year. Currently, he sits 18th in goals saved above expected. I mean, that's middle of the road for a starting goaltender. Karel Vejmelka is 56th in goals saved above expected. So you had a team that was fighting for a wild card spot who, may have had a few games stolen here and there by Ingram, had a few games given away by Karel Vejmelka, but they were getting production out of Sean Dursey, JJ Moser, Yusuf Alamaki, Logan Cooley, especially early on, even though a lot of it was power play, but he's come on strong late at 5v5 lately. Dylan Gunther has been elite since his call up. Um, Maybe not in every single aspect, but if you look at the box at the top right there, it shows his trajectory. Um, the numbers on these graphs are 3 year weighted, but in the 1 year, this year he fits into like the 80th percentile amongst the NHL in terms of wins above replacement. That's fantastic for a 20-year-old. That's unbelievable for a 20-year-old. Logan Cooley has steadily climbed in terms of WAR as well. He was at like 20% at the beginning of January, and he's climbed up to the 53rd percentile. His development has been very obvious, especially in his defensive play. He was a mess responsibly early in the season, and we've seen a huge jump there. I'm not even talking in terms of draft picks because there's guys like Connor Geeky, Simashev, Daniel Boot that have some real potential to play in the NHL, play big minutes, and play a big role. I'm just talking about the guys on this team. When they get league average goaltending, this team was fluctuating on being a wild card team. And
Mhm.
there was a lot of optimism at the beginning of the season because of the signings of Zucker and Dumba and, bringing back Bukestad and Kerfoot. And Bukestad and Kerfoot have contributed quite a bit, but the guys that were supposed to be big in getting this team to the wild card, Zucker and Dumba, they were just okay. I mean, Dumba wasn't even okay. Dumba was probably a bigger liability than he was in terms of helping the Coyotes win games. Um, the players that have since departed, they weren't a big part of the reason why the Coyotes were bordering on a wild card team. We talked in the last episode about our thoughts on Andre Tournier and his ability to make adjustments. And I do think that's something that he's got to grow on as well. It's part of learning as a coach, and he'll get there as well, I think. Or the Coyotes will move forward with a different coach. But I think the team is a lot closer to having a lot of the core pieces together than they're not. And I'm not saying that once all the core pieces are there, this team's going to be a winning team because you still do have to grow as players into physically mature players, get into your prime. The timeline of 6 to 8 years on a rebuild is still true. I mean, the Coyotes are probably still 3 to 4 years out, but the doom and gloom that has been running across Twitter lately, I think, is ill founded because I don't think anybody that's watching the development of these players realizes how far they've actually come in terms of this team winning and losing. And towards the end of that 14-game losing streak, there was probably 5 out of 7 games that they should have won, but got absolutely atrocious goaltending and took losses in. And those will happen. That's the streakiness of the NHL. But I did want to come out and say I would like to see everybody kind of pump the brakes a little bit and look at where certain players are individually.
I have a question for you, Matt, real quick, if you don't mind. Sorry, Granny. Before we get to you, I just want to ask him one
Sure.
real quick thing. Just for those who are watching the video format, and I guess the ones on the audio format, would you mind just a quick brief? What do these numbers and percentiles actually mean? Or if Grandy, if you want to, either way, one of you, just so those watching at
So
home are just like percentages, numbers.
okay, so percentile, I mean it's no different than you go to the doctor and they say you're this tall, you fit into this percentile of all the people in the United States. The percentile is kind of the same thing. It takes every player in the NHL, and it's broken up offensively and defensively, forwards and defensemen. Um, and whatever percentile you're in is basically where you rank in terms of that category. Um, WAR is an accumulative number that basically takes offense, defense, power play, penalty kill, finishing, goals, assists, everything that's on that chart, and it factors it in, and you get one number. Um, offense, defense. The biggest factor there is expected goals for and expected goals against. It's not necessarily, oh, this guy's got this many points and his plus minus is very good, so he must be good at defense. It doesn't account for that. It accounts for the chances that you create via high percentage or high danger passes, high danger scoring chances created, slot passes, your ability to enter the zone, whether it's possession, carry, dump, pass, any way that you get into the zone, it accounts for that. Basically, these numbers are a simplification of lots of microstats, and they tell a story or basically point to what a player struggles at, is good at, where they rank amongst the NHL. On these particular cards, they are JFresh cards. They are a 3-year weighted average for any player that's been in the NHL 3 consecutive years. It's a 2-year average, like in the Dylan Guenther situation or example, 1 year for Logan Cooley, because that's how long they've been in the league. So Logan Cooley's number is true to this year. Dylan Guenther's number right now, 57th percentile. That takes into account last year where he was right around, I don't know, the 20th percentile, and this year he's around the 80th percentile. And he's, it factors those two together, and it's a weighted average between those two seasons. Moser, you get 3 years where, his actual number's not that high, but if you look at the final year on his chart, it's a huge jump. It's a huge step forward for him. Sean Durzi, 50th percentile playing top pair minutes, but that weighted average includes last year, which was a terrible year playing in LA. He didn't play great, and he didn't see a ton of minutes and a ton of opportunity there. So, his offensive numbers were down, and that affects that weighted percentile or that weighted WAR number. So keep in mind when you read things like that big number that sticks out right in front of you, that isn't necessarily where they're at this year. The most important thing to look at is the graph on the right.
On the Sean Durzi one too, specifically Sean Durzi, because I do want to bring this up because I was just reading a thread on it today.
Okay.
Sean Durzi was also playing his offside last year, and he is not one of those players who is capable of playing both sides. He's just not. His offense he needs to be on his strong side for him to get the most use out of, and that's why you saw such a large dip from his first year in LA to his second year in LA.
Excuse me. Oh, well, thank you, Matt, for answering that. But okay. Grandy, anything to add? Any card you want me to look at?
So I do think you're underselling Ingram a bit on the start of the year. He was first in goals saved against expected until mid-December when he slid hard. He slid really hard.
Looks like Matt crashed on us.
But beyond that, I'm in agreement on most of it. The timeline, I mean, I've said this since the beginning. I said this when we were winning. You can talk to anybody in our group chat about this, but I said we're still not at where we are, where people are saying in the rebuild. We have a couple more years left.
And that's like we said last week too, to bring up the Yzer plan, is that they're on year 5, I think 4 or 5, and they're just now starting to kind of, if you want to call it that, fight for a playoff spot. So yeah, I mean, I think if we're going in the direction of the Yzer plan, which it seems like we're about the same formula, not the exact thing, but I think about the same amount of time. So they're a couple of years ahead of us.
Even the Red Wings they have melted down hard because
just goaltending.
Yeah, exactly. It's that simple.
Reimer's god awful.
Well, and losing Larkin, your first line center, also is absolutely a huge blow. But I digress. We still need a couple pieces, and
we'll get them.
I think if you're not battling for a playoff spot, you should still be looking at selling at the deadline, because
get those assets. Just more to add
And
to you later.
everybody's looking at like what good does another draft pick do? What good does more draft picks do? What good those do is using them to trade for active NHL players in the offseason like we have the last 2 years.
Do you still like the Jersey trade as it is
I
today?
love the Jersey trade. I love the Jersey trade.
Mine has not changed at all.
No, because he is what he is. He is a high risk offensive defenseman who's going to struggle in his own end. He's going to get more hate than he deserves because
Like Ekman
when
Larson.
I talk about defensemen, and I think we talked about this on pod before too.
Ekman Larson.
No, not Ekman Larson. Just let me finish my thought, please. When we're talking about defensemen, you have quiet good things, you have loud good things, you have quiet bad things, you have loud bad things. And what Jersey does bad is loud. Turnovers, they stick out. You remember them. Even if they don't have quite as much of an bad impact as horrible defensive positioning, etc. These stick in your mind. They always do. They did with Yandel. Even though we haven't had a guy that can generate offense like Yandel until Jersey, a large part of it is the risk reward system that comes with it. So no, I don't dislike the Jersey trade. Just be patient. Don't expect more out of him than what he is. He's not a first pairing defenseman. He's not a number one defenseman who's capable of every single thing on the ice. He's a power play quarterback who's going to generate offense and is best on a sheltered second pair with a strong defenseman next to him.
All right.
That's something we don't have right now. That is something people also need to keep in mind with the rebuild is we have so many people playing out of position. Jersey, Moser, these guys should be second pairing guys, and they're playing on the first pair.
Hopefully you guys don't hear that background noise, but just want to make sure. Sorry.
Ingram, Vamelka, these are both guys that are probably best served as second backup goalies. Sorry. Bugstead is essentially playing our first line center role because he's playing in every single slot, and the guy's best served as a third line. Hayton, when he's healthy, is the guy that is playing our first line center, and again, he's best as a third line center. As the rebuild commences, you'll see these guys slot into position, and when you see these guys slot into position more, you'll start to see more fruits. You'll start to see more success. Is Matt back yet?
Not yet. So I guess we'll just cover the last topic. We're getting to about an hour 17. So I guess Hayton. What do you want to say about Hayton before we go? Or not go, but...
This is a bummer because this one was another one of Matt's ones that he wanted because I know he absolutely adores Hayton. But I'll do my best and we can kind of give Matt a brief rundown when he comes back in and let him answer. But what I think about Hayton is the guy is going to be a fantastic third line center. He is going to do everything you want out of a third line center. He is just horribly miscast in a first line center role. Not his fault.
not his fault. He has to play there. Yeah, of course not. No.
We don't have that first line center right now because if you played Cooley in a first line center role right now, you would break him.
Kill his confidence. Him. Yeah.
So Hayton's having to play that role, and when we get whether it's Cooley's ready to take the reins or we draft another guy.
I'm trying to get Matt back. 1 second. See if we can pull off here.
Yep, I'll just keep going until we get there.
Yeah, no worries.
However it is, when Hayton is playing that third line center role where he can penalty kill, where he can drive play on the third line, where he can be the defensive maestro he is, It's going to be fantastic, glorious, and beautiful. We're just again not there yet. You have anything you want to add to that, Tyler?
Yeah, honestly, I like the kid too. I'm a Hayton fan for sure. The poor kid, just with the injury luck, sucks this year. But hey, like I said, I know when he gets his role and he does play it well, he'll be fine. I've always kind of liked him, so I just hope that, man, as much as I wish we would speed up the rebuild, I know we shouldn't, obviously, but I just can't wait for more meaningful hockey in the desert. Definitely just ready for that. Let's see, hold on, Matt's still.
We're
Yeah,
all ready for. So, do you want to flash the? Do you want to flash the Hayton card so we can talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, give me 1 second. Pull that up.
I should have pulled another card because there was a comparison I wanted to make to it, but
Oh, dang, it's not on this one. Hold on 1 second. I don't know why I must have gotten. I had the card on me. Hold on 1 second. Let me just pull that up. But that's how it goes sometimes. It's show business, right?
Yeah, right.
Gotta love it. Let's see. Logan Cooley and Gunther. Yuso Valimaki.
Patience, people, patience. We're trying.
I know. This is
We're trying to do a YouTube show and
right.
podcast at the same time, and it's all new.
Yep. For those listening, definitely is a lot of fun though.
Thank you for being an hour and 21 minutes into our podcast.
We got Matt back.
All right.
Let me see something. Hold on 1 second.
Sorry, guys. No idea what happened there.
So we
show
started
business,
talking
baby.
We started talking about Hayton and how I feel. It's conversations me and you have had before where I just feel like he's best in the third line role. I've made all my normal arguments.
I don't have a card sent to me, but I can do this for you. I can pull up his hockey database and we can go from there. So we'll do that.
Okay, I thought we had a card.
I thought so too. I swore we did, but I didn't have one in the text thing unless I missed it somewhere.
I think it might actually be in our Twitter chat.
Oh, is it? Let me see. I can check that real quick.
What is your thoughts on Hayton and his role on the team?
You know what? I think I've said this to you before, Grandy. If Hayton went somewhere else and figured it out, I think everybody would be unbelievably disappointed that they got rid of him because what he does to drive offense and play defense and how good he is at creating and preventing chances are unreal. I do think he's most suited to be a second or third line center. He lacks luck. If he didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. And I feel very, very strongly that he's a much better player than his point. Yeah, he's a much better player than the points this season attribute to what he actually does for the team. If he got NHL average shooting percentage consistently, and some of the passes that he makes were, they found their way into the back of the net, he'd realistically probably be a 50 to 60 point guy consistently, probably closer to 50. But realistically, he'd be the type of, there we go. He'd be the type of second or third line center that a lot of teams would want. Yeah, I mean, if the J Fresh card, since we've explained that, if you look at what he's done this year in terms of creating offense and defense, and even on the power play, it's there. But the finish just does not exist with him right now. And some players
5%
have an issue with it. I mean, some players have an issue with it, and it may never show up for him, and it might be unfortunate. But he is going to create a ton of chances for the guys around him, and he's going to cover up a lot of mistakes for the guys around him.
So let me ask
even
you,
even if the finishing never dies, I will die on the hill that Jesse Puljujärvi, who, for all intents and purposes, his stat card looks identical because he does the same things. He drives offense, and he is great defensively. He just doesn't have the same luck. But
The one issue
these
with
guys
Puljujarvi
are
that's different from Hayton was the language barrier, and I do remember that being a story in Edmonton that they couldn't figure out a way to coach him, and that's why he's bounced around as much as he has. It is a similar card though to Hayton. It really is, and it is a similar factor. And Grandy, that's the perfect comparison.
yep,
Um,
because Puljujärvi is a really good player. If you use him in the right role, forcing him on the first line wing, that's not the right role. First, just like forcing Hayton on the first line center isn't the right role for him. He's playing it because he have no option. We kind of went over that already. But once he gets
and
that
he
third
he
line
did
role,
well in it last year. He did do pretty well in it last year, but it really does come down to the Coyotes need somebody that's going to finish what Clayton Keller starts.
yep,
And Grandy and I have talked about this too when we talk about state of the rebuild. I don't think Cooley and Gunther are the two guys that should be playing with Keller. And I know that's probably a hot take for a lot of people because a lot of people out there think that's this team's future first line. But I think Grandy and I are in agreement on this. Those kids play with a ton of pace. And I don't think Keller plays with as much pace. Keller is a much more composed, play the cycle game, the out high cycle, and create slot shots from there. Whereas Cooley and Gunther like to come in off of the wall, and they generate a lot of their offense down low. So I know this is getting off the Hayton topic a little bit, but I really, really think that a guy like Lawson Krause fits perfectly with those kids, and in the future, it's going to be Daniel Boot. I think he's probably the guy that plays on the wing with Cooley and Gunther. So the Coyotes may not have a center in the system unless Connor Geeky pans out to be that guy. They might not have a center in the system to play with Keller right now.
I'll do it.
they they will as soon as we win the lottery this year.
Yeah, that's
Well,
it.
yeah, I
Let's
mean,
bank on the lottery. Yeah, got a better chance to win the lottery yourself.
at that point, I'd like to see Celebrini down the middle and Cooley move to left wing and Gunther on the right side and
Oh
put
my
those three together
God,
because that line would be, whoo, that line would be something special.
that would that would. So I wanted to do something with you, Matt, and on the state of the rebuild. I tried killing enough time to get you back, but it just didn't work out.
Yeah, I was like,
Um,
come on, showbiz, dance, puppet, dance. We got to get him back on here.
so I want to run through our free agents at the end of this year and then again at the end of next year and see
Sure.
who you think is back in both cases.
You made to pull anything
Okay.
up on
Nope,
Hockey
I
DB or
have
anything
it.
like that? You got it. Okay,
I
cool.
have, yep.
Okay.
Barrett Hayton.
I think so. This is an interesting one because I think he's going to get a 1 year deal. He's an RFA this year, if I remember right.
Yeah, you're right. I
Um,
just pulled it up a
Yep.
little bit ago. Yeah, I had it pulled up. Yep.
so I
I was going
I
to ask
think
that
he's
too.
going to get a 1 year deal because it's going to be difficult to pay him uh, based on two and he should have arbitration rights this year, which don't necessarily work out for him because as of right now, if he didn't play another game, he's got 33 games this year. I think he's at 10 points. It's really hard to pay him based off that, but if you're Barrett Hayton, you might go back and say, well, what did he play? Like 65 or 68 games a year before and had like
Looks like last
40.
year he played 82.
Oh,
Last
so he did
year,
play 82, but he played, I think
43 points.
the big thing
He
was
had such a
of that
bad start to the year.
43, yeah, of that 43 points, I think he had like 35 of it over the final 60 games. And that might be a point for him, to bring up. I think he's going to be back. I don't think Armstrong's ready to move on from him, and I think they saw a lot from him that they liked this year. Um, he'll be back. It's just really hard to pick the term of the deal, and because you said 1 year out, 2 year out, that's where it definitely gets a little weird with Hayton because I can't see them signing him to a 4 year deal coming off of the way this year has gone, which I think would have probably been the target range if they were negotiating after last year. So I do think it's going to be a 1-year prove it deal. And if he does well, I think he'll get 3 years to follow up that. If he doesn't do well, I think that kind of comes down to where are Connor Geeky and anybody else in the system that might be the guy that's replacing him at that point.
Okay, so these next three will be real quick.
Okay.
Everyone's favorite Coyote, Liam O'Brien, UFA.
He's gone. He's gone.
Nate
You know
Smith,
what? Nate Smith,
RFA.
I think the Coyotes would like to keep him in the system, but I think that's going to be a Jan Unique situation because Nate Smith didn't want to sign in Winnipeg, which is why the Coyotes acquired him in the first place, because he didn't see a role to the NHL in Winnipeg. It tells me that it's pretty high on his list to get the opportunity to showcase what he's got in the show, and he might not play a game in the NHL this year. So I think we might see a Jan Unique situation where that one drags out for a while, but I do think the Coyotes qualify him at a minimum and begin negotiating with him on a 1-year deal.
John Leonard, RFA.
I think he's another one that you qualify and bring back to Tucson. I don't see him being a long-term
I think he's a
NHLer
good
or anything,
AHL
but
NHL call-up.
yeah,
AHL legend.
Yeah, I do think that the Coyotes potentially bring him back, keep him around in the AHL.
Now these ones are probably going to take some more time again. Sean Dursey, RFA.
Well, you just gave up a second-round pick for him. He's your leading scoring defenseman. I don't think that we're going to see any kind of 8-year deal signed by Dursey, but I wouldn't be shocked if we see something at a minimum that looks a little bit like the Matthias Michelli contract, which was like 3-year, 3.65 a year. Is that right? Something like that. I do think that's probably the low end, money and term wise, with potentially something like a contract that Nick Schmaltz signed. Closer to 5 or 6 years, $5 million. I think that's the range that those team or that the team and player are going to be negotiating between. And I do think Dursey's going to be back on a multiple year deal.
Josh Brown,
Gone. If he's not, it's going to be on another league minimum deal, and he's likely going to be the healthy scratch, for 55 games again.
kind of like the role he played this year.
Yeah.
Michael
But I
Kesselring.
don't think he's back. Kesselring's back.
I like Kesselring.
I think the Coyotes like what they have in a potential number 6, number 7 defenseman in Kesselring. Probably a 2-year, one-way contract, maybe, $1 million, 1.05, something like that on the light end, but probably a 2-year deal, I would imagine.
I like
Juuso
Kesselring.
Valimaki.
I like Juuso too.
This one's interesting because they gave him that one-way extension after he was a waiver claim. And he played really, really well. The offense was there. The points are there. And I think he's played well this year. I don't necessarily think the points have been there. He had the puck to the face injury. He missed some time. He primarily played third line minutes this year after they brought in Sean Dursey. And he was a healthy scratch quite a few times. And I don't think the healthy scratch was warranted because I do think he was playing much better than guys like Josh Brown and Travis Dermott. Granted, and far better than Matt Dumba, but I don't think you could really scratch Matt Dumba for a long period of time because of what you were paying him and the name and everything that comes along with that. But I do think Valimaki's a solid top 4 defenseman. He makes sense as your number 4 guy. He can play the third pair if you need it. He can quarterback a power play. He probably shouldn't be asked to, but he has the ability to do it, and he can kill penalties. So I think he's a guy that probably deserves a 3-year deal and probably should be back. He's young enough, and he's shown enough that he can be a key piece in a rebuild.
JJ Moser.
My boy.
Another guy that you probably look at a 2 to 3 year deal, more than likely a 3-year deal so that you can cap 1 year of RFA eligibility when it's over. Um, he's played very well in a role that he probably shouldn't be playing. He shouldn't be your top pair defenseman. Um, he'll be a solid number 3 going forward. They invested a second round draft pick in him. He played right out of his draft year in the NHL. I don't see a scenario where he's not back on at least a 2-year deal.
And last name for this year is Travis Dermott.
Gone. I think they were hoping Dermott would be the guy that if they were in a bad situation at the trade deadline would bring something back. He was actually a pretty solid defenseman in Toronto. He had the concussion issues. Um, he didn't play at all last year, I don't believe. And, this was kind of, it felt like the Shane Goss despair. Are we going to get somebody that can rejuvenate their career here that we might be able to flip the deadline? I don't think he was ever a guy that they were expecting to be long term.
So now for the 2 years out, guys, we're going to do this a little bit different. Let's say we are definitely out of the playoffs by the trade deadline next year, around the same place we are this year. We just lost Tyler. Anyways, around the same place we are this year. Let's say a little bit better, 8th in the league. We're right around the 8th draft slot.
Okay.
So we're obvious sellers. Nick Bugstead, keep or sell?
I think I think Bukestad's an interesting one. If anybody that's been following the team for a while, think back to like the 2013 season when Radim Verbata scored I think he was at like 22 goals or 24 goals at the trade deadline. And the Coyotes basically said, we want a first round draft pick and maybe a little more for anybody that wants to take him on as a rental. And they didn't get the asking price and they held on to Verbata through the end of the season. To me, I think that's Nick Bukestad. If he's having another season like he's had the past 2 seasons here, I don't think the Coyotes move him. I honestly think that they probably have a conversation with him maybe in November or December based on where the team's at that says, hey, do you want to come back for another year, another 2 years? We like what you bring to the locker room, the veteran presence that you are. And, he's an Armstrong type player. He's 6'5", he's big, he can score goals, he can win puck battles, he penalty kills. I think if there's anybody on the team that they potentially don't trade that would draw a lot of interest, it's him.
Alex Kerfoot.
I think they'd be willing to move Kerfoot if they're in that spot. And I don't necessarily know that Kerfoot would have a ton of interest in re-signing in Arizona. That said, he did sign, I think, with a 10-team no-trade clause in Arizona. So it's not like they traded for him and he already had that clause. He signed a contract where he could kind of dictate where he goes if he gets traded. So that might make it a little more difficult to move him, unless he's not happy with the way his 2 years went in Arizona. But I do think there's going to be interest for him if the Coyotes are in that position, and I do think he's a guy that they would trade.
Jack McBain.
Another scenario where they gave up a second round pick. I think he fits the fourth line role very well. I don't think he has a problem playing that fourth line role. And I can't imagine that another team's going to come in and offer Arizona, better than what they gave up to get him. He would really have to not be part of their plans going forward. And he's going to be an RFA, and he's still young. I don't see a scenario where they look and go, we tried, he didn't really work out. I think his role is very defined and it's very safe right now. I don't think they move on from him because honestly, the return wouldn't be high enough.
So I want to give my thoughts on that one too. When I look at the team and I think GMBA hockey, I think Jack McBain. I think he's pretty much locked in as the team's fourth liner for years. Um, anyways, then the last name on the list before we get to Tyler's question of the week, Carol Vejmelka.
Um,
Stays.
Tyler jumped back in just to answer that
Stays.
one. Goalies are so voodoo that I'm a strong believer in you either have a top 10 goaltender or that goaltender is available if somebody's willing to pay the price. Um, you look at Darcy Kemper and what he did for a couple years here. He goes to Colorado, he wins a Stanley Cup. When he won his Stanley Cup in Colorado, he was average. He had a great team in front of him, but he played average. He goes to Washington, he's kind of below average. Something about Arizona worked out well for him, and we've seen that in the past. A lot of Coyotes fans remember Louis Domingue. Louis
Mhm.
Domingue had one great year here, and
Yep.
then was so bad that the Coyotes were doing anything they could just to offload his very, very small contract because they didn't have a spot for him to play. Goalies flip so quick that, I mean, I haven't seen enough out of Hamelka. I don't think anybody has to say that he's a career starting goaltender or he's a career backup goaltender or, he's lightning in a bottle. When you catch it, he's on. And when you miss it, you're playing with Swiss cheese in your net. So Vamelka is just one that I can't answer. I can't even speculate on because who knows how he's going to be playing next year.
Let
And I
me
think
ask you
how
this
he's
then.
playing next year matters.
Let me ask you this. So he's 2 years out, right, Grandy?
No, yeah. So next year would be his last year.
Okay. I was gonna say, so if it was this year was RFA, what contract you'd say would be bad? But never mind. If he has 2 years left, and or another year left, and screw it. We'll ask that question next year.
Yeah, and I think Matt Viata in Tucson has kind of made Vamelka expendable to a degree. He could be the next guy up.
I think honestly. So my thoughts on Vejmelka too is when you look at him, the guy's never been top 18 in goals saved against expected at any point in the season. He's barely held a 900 save percentage when he's been above 900, which isn't that often. He he's replaceable goalie written all over him. But a guy in a very similar situation, Kapel Kakinen, just got moved this trade deadline. So you never know. You just
Yeah,
don't
but he
know with
got
goalies.
moved for another guy who's a very replaceable goaltender in a one for one. So, I mean, yeah, you could move him, but if you're asking if there's an asset coming back for him, there might
No.
have been last year when at the deadline he was playing pretty well. I just I think now there's enough out there about him that I don't know that any team's looking at him going, "Hey, we could, we got a starting goalie in this guy. Let's go out and get him."
But that was it. I just wanted to run through those names at the state of the rebuild because I think those are the 2 years where you're kind of starting to see the core shake into place. So,
All right. Here's my
plus
question of the week.
we have a ton of cap space this offseason. A
I
ton.
I think in terms I do think in terms of the rebuild, though, when you're talking about players who are here who might not be here as we come out of the rebuild, I think that's a more important way to look at things.
And I think that's a
I know
that's a topic for next
I
pod, maybe.
well, so I mean, in terms of the questions that you asked about who's going to be back, and we've talked about who will still or who potentially is coming up. Um, I'll keep it short. I won't go into why. Even though I've been a huge proponent of not trading Nick Schmaltz, I think when they come out of the rebuild, Nick Schmaltz probably isn't here. I still think he's good for the team now and for the players around him, but he'll open up a spot. I do think that O'Brien's gone. We've already got a fourth line right wing spot potentially open. Lawson Krause should be a third liner, which in all practicality opens up a second line wing spot. So I do think as far as forwards go, there's 3 top 9 spots that will definitely need to be filled. And we'll see the progression with Cooley and Gunther, and I think Geeky fills one of those spots, and Daniel Boot fills potentially one of them. I still think there's one guy missing there. And then on the back end, I think there's 4 guys that they can move forward with in Dersey, Valimaki, Moser, and Kesselring. But Kesselring may not be an everyday NHLer, so there's at least 3 guys that you need on that blue line still. And Simashev might be one, and Duda might be the other. But we'll see how they develop. There's a reason why they've still got a ton of draft picks.
Well, there goes a whole topic I had for next week.
All right.
Well, it doesn't
Sneak preview.
Doesn't totally make it disappear, because there's arguments for and against those, and we've had some of those before, especially in terms of Schmaltz. And there's a ton of potential free agent signings, especially since Tyler talked about last week, that most of the dead cap is gone. And what do you do getting back to the floor? And
I'll miss Pavel Datsyuk, though.
I mean, you've been missing him for a while.
But I hate to tell you.
I can still dream.
There's definitely the potential for who do they look at in free agency. So definitely a topic that we can dig very deep into next week.
So, real quick, because I don't know if Tyler knew this or not, and I just kind of want to see his reaction on pod. Do you know what Datsyuk has been up to?
He was playing for the KHL last I checked in, but I don't know. Hopefully come back to Detroit. I don't know.
Last I had heard, he is...
Oh, he's a fisherman, too, isn't he? I know he likes to fish a lot, too.
Last I heard, he is living in, like, this psycho conspiracy theorist town in Russia. That's, like, this commune in Russia.
Dude, that's fucking cool.
Is he like best friends with Theo Fleury or what?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Like that. Yeah.
That's crazy. I didn't expect that. I know you like to fish. I know you like to play hockey, but I didn't expect a commune. That's something new. All right. Well, I mean, still got great mitts. What can I say? Still a magician. So, all right. Question of the week. You boys ready? Real easy one this week. In the vein of last week, if you guys are. So, we saw the renders. We talked about a secondary mascot. So we all saw those renders, as gloriously shown on our wonderful screen here for those that are watching the whatever video version, excuse me. What would you guys add to the arena right now if you got to pitch it? They said, all right, Matt, Grandy, what were we missing in this here thing? What's going on? What would you add to it? Obviously, we know there's hotels and movie theater and the arena and the practice rink, but what would you make sure is there, I should say? Not really missing. What would you make sure is there? And you can't say a statue of Gary Bettman. Yeah.
Cynically.
Can you say a statue of Shane Dolan?
No. No statues.
Cynically, some sort of light up sign that says, "You missed out, Tempe."
I like it.
Yeah.
Pettiness is good. I like that. Okay. I'll take that. Grandy, what are you cooking over there?
Part of me wants to just say that this is we gotta have
Oh no.
the Futurama line. Fine, I'll make my own with blackjack and
Oh,
hookers.
there you go.
Oh, there you go.
I'll take it. Blackjack and hookers. Yeah, I mean, why not have gambling? I know he owns Sahara. Why not put a mini Sahara over there? I don't know.
I mean, how petty would it be if like Alex Morello built his own Tempe Town Lake?
That'd be fucking awesome. That'd be fucking funny.
You know what? There's room. There's room there. There's still room to grow.
Yeah.
So.
Because you're only taking a quarter of it, right? There's only like 30 of the acres or something like that being used. Something like that, right? For the arena and all this stuff. Something like that.
You know, I'm not 100% sure, actually. I
So-
didn't look that far into
Because the
that.
picture, I saw a picture of it that had like a big block and the arena was only in this little side. So,
Well, so
I
that
wanna
might just be
say-
the arena and not like all the housing and everything else. I
oh,
don't know.
yeah, maybe so. Yeah, I don't know.
I want to say to the east and north, and I could be dead wrong on my directions here. It's empty land, but then like a little bit, quarter mile to the east, there's a big outdoor mall, and then
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, to the east. Yeah, you're right.
to the north is where all the hotels and shopping districts are. So like it is actually very beautifully situated in
Yeah.
an area that is going to grow massively in the next several years.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Well, mine would be a little bit different, but I think a great idea nonetheless. I think we should move the Rising into that little area. Get some deal going with the Phoenix Rising. I think they deserve a good home. Just took Open Championship. Their current one is okay. It's just a swap meet parking lot, grass field, but it's home nonetheless. I'll be there Saturday. Yeah, I think having to deal with the Rising or even trying to lure the MLS gag would be pretty good too. Something there, have a something to do during the summertime when the Yotes aren't playing, just to have some more revenue come in. But something like that would be nice. Maybe have ASU have something there or whatever. But just something to fill during the summertime would be great. So preferably the Phoenix Rising could work a deal out. We'll see. I think they have a deal with Phoenix to use that plot on 38th in Washington for another year or two. So maybe we'll see. That's it. Anything else before we let these people go on their merry way, gentlemen?
Yeah. So that kid from AZ scored 2 more tonight.
Oh,
We
wow.
have an Arizona hockey player that's going to hit. It's 2 goals away from 60 goals in the NHL.
Wait, but
That's
hockey doesn't work in the
pretty
desert.
Special.
That's weird.
Yeah, but did you know in the same game, the greatest goal scorer of all time, who's better than that Arizona kid, scored his 22nd of the year and is now
Yeah.
just 51 goals.
Yeah,
shy
Ovechkin. Yeah.
of Wayne Gretzky's
I thought
record.
he was 50 away now.
Yeah, that was. Yeah. No.
I
Is it 52?
thought he was 52 away coming into the game.
Okay, I could have sworn I saw a graphic saying he was 50 away, but I might be mistaken.
He may have scored 2 goals in that game. I don't know.
Well, all right. That's all we got, boys. We'll plan on seeing these people next week. And from all of us here at the Tripping Notes podcast, have a good rest of your night.